But according to our next guest, before you let the good times roll at your house, you should do a quick legal inventory to make sure your assets are covered. I'm joined now by Lexington attorney Gina Ghioldi. Thank you for joining us.
Happy to be here.
Well, obviously we are talking about liability. Tell us about this legal inventory. What do you mean?
Well, what I mean is make sure before you have people over to your house, or you take a look at which neighbors are going to be popping by when you're maybe not home, you take a look at what's going on in your own backyard to make sure that you minimize your legal liability, because if there's one unfortunate accident, it can really put all of your assets and your home on the line. So you have to be careful.
So you look in your backyard and you see a pool or you see a swing set. I mean, that's what you own. What are you supposed to do?
That's right, and don't forget the trampoline, and don't forget the slide, and
the dog.
Of the others, and the dog. Well, and I'm not trying to be a party pooper here. I know that nobody wants to have the attorney over for a party because they're thinking liability, but you have to. You have things out in your backyard that actually people could get injured on. And remember, not just the people that you invite to your house, but if you have something in your backyard that attracts children, and they could come onto your property and get injured, even if you don't invite them, you could be held liable legally. So you have to make sure that you do everything you can to minimize your risk and have the right insurance in place in case the unfortunate really does happen.
Well, talk about these precautions. Are you supposed to put up a fence? Do you have to put up a fence?
Well, of course, if you have a pool, your particular town or city will dictate what you need to do. And the prudent thing, of course, even if it's not mandated, is to have a fence around that pool. There are drowning accidents every year, and nobody wants to think about them, but they do happen, and you certainly don't want it to happen on your property.
And do you think people are naive, assuming that perhaps their friends who've been invited to their house won't sue them?
Well, and nobody wants to think about suing somebody else, whether they know them, they're friends or not. But the reality is, if somebody gets injured, then somebody has to make sure that their damages and their injuries are taken care of. Imagine having your own friends or family over, somebody gets hurt, and you don't have the insurance to take care of them and to make sure that they're okay.
So then what should you look for when you're going for a homeowner's policy?
Well, you want to make sure that your homeowner's agent is up front with you and lets you know whether or not your particular things that you have in your backyard, or your dog, and I hate to talk about it, but dogs are a huge liability, that they're going to cover you. Many places or many insurance companies won't cover you if you have certain types of dogs, and they can discriminate against you. They can not renew your policy. They can deny you a policy based on the type of dog that you have. So ask up front, make sure that your dog is covered. If not, shop around for an insurance company that does cover your dog.
Can you ever be 100% protected?
Well, what you can do is make sure that you've minimized your risk, you've done everything you can to keep children out of your backyard if they're not invited, that you keep your backyard safe, and you've got the right homeowner's policy. But sometimes that amount of money that your homeowner's policy will offer if somebody gets hurt isn't enough. And you can consider something called an umbrella policy. And that's if somebody gets injured on your property, or they're injured because you run them over with your car or whatever, you've got a big umbrella policy, so there's money there to take care of somebody. So your assets and your house aren't up for grabs.
And you think that's worth the price, the umbrella policy?
I think that it's worth the price, but it depends on what types of liabilities you have. So really take an inventory, talk to your insurance agent, talk to your attorney, figure out what types of things you can do to minimize your risk and have the right insurance in place. And just, be kind of savvy about it. Take a look. Where could somebody get hurt? Take care of that, and then have a good time. Have the people over and have a good party.
And I'm sure people do invite you to their parties.
They do invite me to their parties, but my husband cringes when I start looking at who has a fence and who's got the right dog kennel in place. So.
All right, you've given us a lot of food for thought and great advice. Gina Ghioldi, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.